I never expected to end up in the corner office of Meridian Capital Partners, especially not after what happened 2 years ago. The universe has a strange way of setting things right. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Ethan Mercer, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought mattered, only to gain something I never imagined possible. 3 years ago, I was working as a mid-level investment analyst at Callaway Financial. The hours were brutal, the pay was decent but not exceptional, and my boss Harrison liked to remind me that I was replaceable at least twice a week. But I had Alexis, and that made everything worthwhile. We met during her first day at Callaway. She was assigned to our department as a marketing specialist, tasked with making our financial products seem exciting to millennials. I still remember the moment she walked into our team meeting, confidence in every step, intelligence flashing behind her eyes. Within a month, we were dating. By 6 months, she had moved into my downtown apartment. "We're going to build something amazing together," she'd whisper at night, her head resting on my chest as we planned our future. I believed her. For almost 2 years, we were inseparable, the couple everyone envied, the partnership that seemed unbreakable. Then Cameron Wells entered the picture. Cameron was everything I wasn't: senior management at Hudson Shaw Investments, our biggest competitor. Old money background. Vacation home in the Hamptons. The kind of man who wore custom suits not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because off-the-rack clothing simply wasn't made for him. He met Alexis at a cross-company networking event I had been too busy to attend. I was working late, trying to finish a risk assessment model that Harrison had dumped on me last minute. Looking back, that was the beginning of the end. "You should have seen the Hudson Shaw offices," Alexis said casually one evening. "Their analysts have private offices, not cubicles. And their annual client retreat is in Bali this year." I nodded, only half listening as I worked through spreadsheets at our kitchen table. "That's nice. Cameron says they're always looking for talented people," she continued, her voice carrying an undertone I didn't recognize at the time. "He thinks my marketing background combined with what I've learned about finance at Callaway makes me a perfect fit for their team." That got my attention. I looked up, meeting her eyes. "You're not seriously considering working for our competitor, are you?" She shrugged, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "It's just something to think about." 2 weeks later, I came home to find half the closet empty and a note on the kitchen counter. "Ethan, I've realized I need more than what we have. Cameron has helped me see what's possible when you refuse to settle. I'm sorry, but I've outgrown what we built together. One day you'll understand this was for the best." Alexis, the note was typed, not handwritten. Not even a real signature. Just like that, 2 years vanished into nothing. I called her, texted her, emailed her, nothing. It was as if a switch had been flipped and I no longer existed. Through mutual friends, I learned she had moved into Cameron's penthouse in the exclusive Archer building downtown. 3 weeks later, I saw them together in a society page photo at a charity gala. Her hand was on his arm, her smile brighter than I'd seen in months. I'd like to say I handled it with dignity. That I picked myself up immediately and channeled my pain into something productive. But the truth is, I collapsed. I started missing deadlines at work. I stopped returning calls from friends. I spent weekends staring at my walls, wondering what I could have done differently. Harrison called me into his office on a dreary Tuesday morning, exactly 1 month after Alexis left. "Mercer," he said without looking up from his computer, "your work has been garbage for weeks. Either get your act together or clear out your desk." Something about his callous dismissal of what I was going through sparked something in me. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. "What would you do," I asked quietly, "if you knew you could create something better than this place? Something that would change the industry?" Harrison finally looked at me, surprise briefly crossing his face before settling back into his usual disdain. "I'd say you're delusional. You're a spreadsheet jockey, Mercer. That's all you'll ever be." I nodded slowly, stood up, and walked out of his office. Then I walked straight to HR and handed in my resignation. The HR manager seemed more concerned about my access badge than about losing an employee of 5 years. That night, I sat in my half-empty apartment and truly looked at my life for the first time. Alexis leaving had broken me, yes. But maybe what needed breaking wasn't my heart but my complacency. For years, I'd had an idea brewing in the back of my mind, a proprietary algorithm for predicting market micro-trends that traditional models missed. I had mentioned it to Alexis once, but she dismissed it as impractical. The big firms already have teams of PhDs working on models, she had said. You can't compete with that. I opened my laptop and began to work. No more excuses. No more waiting for someone else's approval. If I failed, at least it would be on my terms. For the next 6 months, I lived like a hermit. I drained my savings to rent a small office in a building that had seen better days. I sold my car, moved to a cheaper apartment, and poured everything into developing my algorithm. My few remaining friends stopped calling after I declined their invitations for the 10th time. Then something unexpected happened. The algorithm worked. Not just worked, but exceeded my wildest expectations. It identified patterns no one else was seeing, predicted market shifts with uncanny accuracy. I ran back testing against 5 years of market data, and the potential returns were staggering. I knew I needed capital to launch properly, but no traditional investor would touch me, a lone analyst with no track record and no institutional backing. Then I remembered Martin Chin, a former client from Callaway who had always treated me with respect even when Harrison took credit for my work. "You have 15 minutes, Martin said when I finally secured a meeting. He was direct, efficient, and famously shrewd with his investments. I presented my algorithm, showed him the back-tested results, and explained my vision for a new kind of investment fund. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "10 million, he finally said. "For 20% of the company. But I want proof this works in real market conditions before the money is fully released." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're saying yes?" "I'm saying maybe," Martin corrected. "You get 2 million now to set up operations and prove your concept. The rest comes when you show actual returns." I shook his hand before he could change his mind. The next year was the hardest I have ever worked. I assembled a small team of outsiders like myself, brilliant minds who had been overlooked or undervalued at traditional firms. We set up shop in modest offices and began deploying the algorithm with real capital. The results were immediate and impressive. By the end of the first quarter, we had returned 18% on Martin's initial investment. By the end of the year, that number had grown to 34%. Martin released the remaining funds and introduced me to other investors. Mercer Analytics grew faster than I ever imagined possible. We moved to better offices, hired more staff, and started making waves in the industry. Business journals began writing about the mysterious newcomer disrupting traditional investment models. Our client list expanded to include tech entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and yes, even some old money families who could recognize a good thing when they saw it. I was so focused on building the company that I hardly thought about Alexis anymore. I heard through the grapevine that she and Cameron had gotten engaged. Good for them, I thought, and meant it. The wound had healed into something more like a distant memory. Then came the news that changed everything. Hudson Shaw Investments was in trouble. Their latest quarter had shown significant losses and rumors of mismanagement were swirling. Their stock was plummeting and clients were getting nervous. My COO, Rachel, dropped the Wall Street Journal on my desk one morning. "Have you seen this?" she asked, pointing to an article about Hudson Shaw's troubles. I scanned the piece, noting with professional interest the details of their financial woes. "Looks like they bet big on the wrong sectors," I commented. Rachel leaned against my desk, arms crossed. "Word is they're looking for a bailout. Someone to come in with fresh capital and a new direction." I looked up at her, already knowing where she was going with this. "No. Ethan, it makes perfect business sense. Their client portfolio is still valuable and their infrastructure is solid. They just need new leadership and better strategy." Rachel's eyes gleamed with the excitement of a potential deal. "And I've already done some digging. We could probably get them for pennies on the dollar. I sat back in my chair, considering. From a purely business perspective, she was right. Acquiring Hudson Shaw would immediately double our size and give us access to institutional clients that might otherwise take years to court. But the personal implications. I'll think about it, I said, turning back to my computer. Don't think too long, Rachel warned as she headed for the door. We won't be the only ones circling. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment, weighing the professional opportunity against my personal history. Was I contemplating this acquisition partly out of revenge? Would the satisfaction of becoming Cameron's boss outweigh the discomfort of having Alexis back in my life? By morning, I had my answer. This wasn't about revenge, it was about building the best company possible. If Hudson Shaw's assets could help us do that, then personal history had to take a back seat to business logic. I called Rachel at 6:30 a.m. Make the offer, I said. But keep me anonymous for now. Just use Mercer Analytics, not my name. The next 3 weeks were a blur of due diligence, negotiations, and paperwork. Hudson Shaw's situation was even more desperate than reported. They needed this deal to happen quickly. We secured favorable terms, including full operational control and a complete restructuring of the executive team. The deal was set to close on a Thursday. On Wednesday afternoon, I received an email informing me that Hudson Shaw had scheduled an all-hands meeting for 10 a.m. the next day to announce the acquisition and introduce the new management. I was expected to address the staff. That night, I chose my suit carefully, a bespoke charcoal gray Tom Ford that I had made after closing our first $100 million client. Not flashy, but unmistakably high quality. The kind of suit Cameron might wear, but without the family crest cufflinks. I arrived at Hudson Shaw's building at 9:45 a.m., accompanied by Rachel and our CFO, James. The receptionist directed us to the conference room on the top floor where the meeting would take place. Nervous? Rachel asked in the elevator. I adjusted my tie. Not nervous. Just preparing. The conference room was already packed when we arrived. About 60 employees seated in rows with the executive team at the front. My eyes found Cameron immediately, his posture rigid, his face a mask of forced calm. And there, 2 seats away from him, was Alexis. Her hair was shorter now, styled in an elegant bob that framed her face. She was whispering something to the woman next to her, unaware of my presence. The current CEO, a gray-haired man named Richard Porter, stepped to the podium. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, he began, his voice carrying the weight of difficult news. As most of you know, Hudson Shaw has been facing significant challenges in recent quarters. Today, I'm announcing that we've agreed to an acquisition by Mercer Analytics. A murmur swept through the room. I saw Cameron's head snap up at the mention of my company's name. He scanned the back of the room where I stood with my team, his eyes passing over me once before returning, widening with recognition. Alexis followed his gaze, confusion on her face until she saw me. The color drained from her cheeks. I'd like to introduce the founder and CEO of Mercer Analytics, who will be taking over as CEO of the combined entity, Porter continued, gesturing toward the back of the room. Mr. Ethan Mercer. The room fell silent as I walked to the front. I could feel Cameron's eyes burning into me, could see Alexis's hands gripping the armrests of her chair. I took my place at the podium, looked out at the sea of faces, some curious, some worried, some hostile. And right in the front row, the 2 people who had once made me question my own worth. Good morning, I said, my voice steady. I know transitions like this can be unsettling. You're wondering what this means for your jobs, your projects, your future. So let me be direct. Hudson Shaw has valuable talent and expertise. That's a significant part of why we wanted this acquisition. I paused, making eye contact with various people around the room. I deliberately avoided Alexis and Cameron. But things will change. We operate differently at Mercer Analytics. We value innovation over tradition, results over pedigree, merit over politics. Now I look directly at Cameron. In the coming weeks, every department will be reviewed for efficiency and alignment with our new direction. Some roles will change. Some may be eliminated. Everyone will have the opportunity to demonstrate their value. Cameron's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what I was saying. His position was no longer guaranteed. I'll be meeting with each department head beginning this afternoon, I continued. Until then, please continue with your current projects. My team will be sending out a more detailed transition plan by the end of the day. As I stepped away from the podium, Richard Porter began discussing logistical details. I took a seat at the side of the room, finally allowing myself to meet Alexis's gaze. She stared at me with a complex mixture of emotions, shock, certainly, but something else too. Something that looked almost like regret. The meeting concluded and people began to file out, buzzing with anxious conversation about the news. Cameron made a beeline for me, Alexis trailing behind him. "Ethan," he said, his voice pitched low enough that only those nearby could hear. "Quite a surprise." I smiled politely. "Cameron, I'm looking forward to reviewing the Wealth Management Division's performance." "His division, of course. I'm sure you'll find everything in order," he replied stiffly. "Though I have some concerns about the compatibility of our client management approaches." "I'm sure you do," I said. "We can discuss that in your performance review next week." His face flushed, but before he could respond, Alexis stepped forward. "Ethan, it's good to see you." Her voice was softer than I remembered, or maybe just more uncertain. "Alexis," I acknowledged with a nod. "I believe you're in marketing?" "Our CMO will be conducting department evaluations starting tomorrow." The professional distance I maintained seemed to throw her more than any anger would have. She had prepared for rage, for bitterness, for a scene. She hadn't prepared for calm, professional detachment. "Yes, of course," she managed. "I look forward to it." "If you'll excuse me," I said, "I have several calls to make." I turned away, signaling to Rachel that we should go. As we walked toward the elevator, Rachel leaned in. "Well, that was interesting." "Former girlfriend. Ancient history," I replied. Over the next month, we restructured Hudson Shaw from top to bottom. Cameron's performance review revealed exactly what I suspected. His division had been hiding losses through creative accounting, and his actual investment strategy was outdated and ineffective. He was offered a significant demotion or a generous severance package. He took the money and was gone within a week. Alexis, surprisingly, turned out to be highly competent. Her marketing strategies were innovative and effective. Cameron had been the one holding her back, insisting on traditional approaches that appealed to his old money sensibilities. After her department evaluation, our CMO recommended keeping her in a senior role. "Are you okay with that?" Rachel asked when I reviewed the recommendations. I considered it carefully. "Is she the best person for the job?" "Objectively, yes," Rachel admitted. "Then personal history stays out of it," I decided. Approve the recommendation. 3 months into the merger, I was working late when there was a knock at my office door. I looked up to see Alexis standing in the doorway, a folder in her hands. "Sorry to bother you," she said, "but the Q3 marketing plan needs your signature." Rachel said it couldn't wait until tomorrow. "Come in," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. She sat down and handed me the folder, watching as I flipped through the documents. The awkward silence stretched between us until she finally broke it. "I never congratulated you," she said. "On everything you've built? It's remarkable, Ethan." I signed the last page and closed the folder. "Thank you." "I was wrong," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "About you. About what was possible." I looked at her, then really looked at her for the first time since the acquisition. The woman I had once planned a future with. The woman whose absence had nearly destroyed me. The woman whose rejection had ultimately set me on this path. "No," I said finally. "You were right." She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "You said I needed to see what was possible when I refused to settle." I handed her back the folder. "You leaving showed me exactly that." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I didn't leave because you weren't enough, Ethan. I left because I was afraid. Afraid I'd never have the things Cameron could give me. The status, the security, the lifestyle. It was never about you not being enough. I know that now, I said simply. And in a strange way, I'm grateful. It took losing everything to make me build something better. She nodded slowly, accepting the truth in my words. What happens now? Now? I leaned back in my chair. Now you continue doing excellent work for the marketing department, and I continue leading this company. The personal part of our history is over, Alexis. But professionally, as long as you continue to excel, you have nothing to worry about. She stood, clutching the folder to her chest. Thank you. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for how I left. I'm not, I said truthfully. Not anymore. After she left, I walked to the window of my office, looking out at the city lights. In the reflection of the glass, I could see how far I'd come from that broken man sitting in a half-empty apartment. The journey had been difficult, painful at times, but necessary. Success, I had learned, wasn't about proving something to someone else. It wasn't about revenge or vindication. It was about becoming the person you were meant to be all along. 6 months later, Mercer Analytics was featured on the cover of Fortune magazine. The new kings of Wall Street, the headline proclaimed, with a photo of me standing confidently in front of our headquarters. The article detailed our meteoric rise, the successful acquisition of Hudson Shaw, and our revolutionary approach to investment strategy. There was a small section that mentioned how I had once worked at Callaway Financial as a mid-level analyst. Harrison, who still worked there, was quoted saying he always knew Ethan had potential. I had to laugh at that. Alexis sent me a congratulatory email with a link to the article. Simple, professional. I responded in kind. We had established a new normal, mutual respect without the complications of the past. I sometimes wonder what would have happened if she hadn't left. Would I ever have found the courage to pursue my ideas? Would I have remained comfortably mediocre, never pushing beyond the boundaries others had set for me? It's impossible to know, of course. But I suspect that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the best thing that ever happened to you if you let it. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a setback that ultimately led to something better? Have you ever been underestimated by someone whose opinion once mattered to you? What did you do about it? Remember, success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. About recognizing your own value even when others don't. It's about building something meaningful, not out of spite, but because you know deep down what you're capable of. So tell me your story. I'm listening.